That week, Ken's latest movie had just opened at theatres. I bought a ticket for the movie at a small old-fashioned cinema and went inside. It was the story of my life, the story so far. The heroine is me, and I felt loved. After the movie was over, I wandered back past shops and cafes. As I passed one cafe with tables and chairs scattered out onto the footpath, a young boy about 13 or 14 years old stood up and followed after me. "Hey," he said. I tried to ignore him. "Hey you, did you just come out of that cinema?" he asked. I looked at him and nodded. "Did you just see that new film of Ken's?" I kept nodding. "Was it worth it?" I checked into a hostel that night, and the owner asked if I had any children. "No, not yet, but maybe I'll have a busload one day," I said flippantly with hope. A day or so later, a busload of Egyptian women and children were killed when it crashed. Travelling any longer seemed pointless. I reluctantly decided to return back to my country. On the last night, I went out for a walk around the block. I bought a calling card and walked to the phone booth. And then I dialed the number scrawled in my notebook for my therapist. I needed to speak to her again. "She's not available," said the lady on the other end. "Can you tell me when I can speak with her? It's very important," I said. There was a pause on the other end. "She passed away," she said. "How?" I asked. "She was killed by her daughter, suffering paranoid delusions," she said. I hung up. The lines were all moving. The train was jumping the tracks. After a while, I stopped and sat on the step of a house in the dark street to have a cigarette. It was deserted, and I sat there for about 10 minutes in the quiet night until suddenly I heard footsteps. A young man in a hooded sweater was coming towards me down the centre of the street in the dark shadows of the overhanging trees. As he moved under a lamplight, I saw him, wild-eyed with rage. He was striding toward me, crossing the street to where I was sitting. Then I heard a second set of footsteps, an old lady walking down the path. The wild man saw her, stopped in the centre of the street, then quickly turned away. The old woman walked along the footpath and turned the corner. He was across the road, pacing back and forth a few times, and then he retreated. I stood up and started walking down the centre of the deserted road, heading back to the hotel. But a surge of anger stopped me, and I turned back to the man, wanting to scream, "You want to kill me? Here I am." But the moment passed and I continued, expecting him to attack me from behind. I was just drifting off to sleep when I heard a distant cry in the still night, as if from the man a long way away. He roared, "War!" But don't we all want peace? Don't we all want love? And don't we all want truth? It must be a fool who walks between the firing lines, trying to mediate in a world at war, a veiled game. Playing along perpetuates the game, and it seems no one wants to keep playing, but nobody knows how to stop. Playing means protection, but it's the same veil that everyone wants to rip off. When the plane rose up, I watched the soft dark landscape floating away in gentle evening rings of deep reds and soft pinks. I was alone in a row of 3 seats and slept. The plane is crash landing, but as it tilts downward, I look out the window and see smoke rising from bombs and fires and looting across the city. Rows of people, like refugees, are walking in lines with suitcases across the landscape. People are being marshalled into limestone pits, and as the plane draws close to the water, I see it is contaminated red with blood.